All right, today is September the 14th, 2025, Sunday night. We don't have a whole lot of time tonight, but there's too much to not do an update. And the developments are very consistent with what we would expect for a psyop, a staged event, but it's getting even deeper. So let's just go ahead and start with this. I released a video this morning called Charlie Kirk and the Tempest, Metascript Decode, about the show The Tempest, which came out on September the 10th, the same day that Kirk was shot. Very popular show right now. And the leader of the new Republican Party is shot in a church. And people made the correlation between Charlie Kirk, the name Kirk, and church. But he's shot exactly where Charlie Kirk was shot. So it happens on TV the same day. It's just life imitating Hulu. Normally it's Netflix, but it's a consistent pattern. It's predictable. I even said, if it's a hoax, there's going to be relevant, predictive, or concurrent programming. And I didn't expect to find something so specific. But with the Tempest, there's a few other clues that have popped up around that. So we're still looking into it. The Tempest, Shakespeare's where we get Brave New World. Hell is empty, all the devils are here. And I think these are playing into the script. Brave New World is the name of the Captain America, where Harrison Ford is president at the podium, gets shot at, and that trailer was released the day before Trump was shot. And it was so similar that Marvel Comic Universe changed the trailer after the fact. And as far as hell being empty, all the devils are here, evil is on full display with the left in their praise of the assassination. So I don't believe it was real, but those who do think it's real are reacting realistically, organically, according to their real feelings. But now this show, The Tempest, it's the very first episode where the Charlie Kirk-esque character, leader of the New Republicans, is shot in the neck and dies publicly. Well, I kept watching it because I said, I got to keep watching it because it's going to give us clues as to what's coming up next. And it really focuses on the widow and how the widow decides to pick up where he left off. So he's running for office. Now she's running for office. Well, immediately after Kirk supposedly died, his wife comes out and gives this speech. And she called for essentially retribution, about the world will hear the echo of the cries of the widow. And it's kind of interesting here because just today, she vowed to carry on his legacy. Washington Times, Charlie Kirk's assassination unleashes a global groundswell of support. Erica Kirk vows to carry on his legacy. So the widow carrying on is exactly what happened in the TV show. And this is what we call concurrent programming. And it's one of the best examples we've come across in a long time. And then I put out another short video because there's something else that has popped up having to do with the birth dates. So we all know the significance of death dates and birth dates in all of these psyops and the actors. It's pretty intricate. Like Harrison Ford plays a president who gets shot at, giving a speech in the trailer that comes out the day before Trump is shot at. His birthday, 7/13, the day that Trump was shot. Mark Ruffalo plays a Trump-esque character who's shot at while giving a speech. The bullet even grazes his cheek. He poses for the cameras. His birth date's 11/22, the day JFK was shot. And on and on. It's a repeated pattern. We have even a psyop card about this one. Kyle Rittenhouse and Greta Thunberg, equally annoying paragons of far left, far right values, poster children of what these parties represent. They're both born January 3rd, 2003. So the Metascript has some astrological as well as astrotheological connotations, and they make a lot of, I think they put a lot of significance into not only birth dates but death dates. So now back to the birth date things. So Charlie Kirk, right before he died, was talking about Irina Zaruska, the woman who was killed in the subway. He was describing this as a turning point for the right, how now they have like a white George Floyd scenario. That's how he was hyping it. And the phrase, the right has their own George Floyd, white lives matter, these things happened in the wake of that, and Kirk was a part of it. He was called out by Van Jones for trying to create a white George Floyd. And this has been part of their plan. In fact, I was pointing out that Austin Metcalf was their attempt to create a white Trayvon Martin. So what Kirk had said, and this is right like a day before he died, a few days before, if a random white person took a knife and stabbed a black girl senselessly, there'd be massive media coverage. We saw this with George Floyd. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because they're clamoring for a martyr to rally around. And it seems like they have it now, especially if you look at the organizing going on around Charlie Kirk. Huge events being planned. J.D. Vance is hosting Kirk's podcast tomorrow. And across the country, there's a lot of things being organized. Chapters, thousands of chapter requests for Turning Point USA. So it is actually blowing up. So it was pointed out by Lean Dion in our Discord server. George Floyd's birth date, October 14th, 1973. Charlie Kirk, October 14th, 1993. So it's 33 days after 9/11. But October 14th, these two martyrs, same birthday. So this is another example of what is typical with psyops. Hallmarks of a psyop are dates that have these not just coincidental connections, because there are no coincidences on the world stage. There's no coincidences in movies. This is just further indication of how scripted it all is. Andrea says, Robin Westman, Minnesota, Tyler Robinson, CK. Yeah, Robin. And of course, there's some more connections here as well if we get into the movie Weapons with the 217 and the shooter in Utah at this Charlie Kirk event, but also the shooter at Annunciation, which has connections to the movie Weapons. These things are all integrated, is what I'm pointing out. But one of the best examples so far is the Tempest. So we've been keeping up with this pretty closely. And so watching the Tempest, yeah, it's about the widow picking up. SOG says, so you don't think it happened? Well, what's your evidence that it did happen? There are too many contradictions to the official story, too many inconsistencies that we've been pointing out. A lot of people are noticing, how come the police weren't called? Why weren't there any EMTs? Where is the ambulance? There are legitimate questions being raised about the disposition of the body, where it went, and how quickly this has all happened. But no, I don't have any evidence that it was real. I don't know what your evidence is. The burden of proof is not on us now that enough doubt has been cast as to the veracity of the mainstream media's claims. So if you're resting your belief on you saw it on TV, you're way behind. And that's inexcusable in 2025 when the visual aspect of media can be faked so easily. And then, okay, Joe Fiore, good one. Did you catch the Joe Rogan podcast where he found out about Charlie Kirk? He was talking about the JFK assassination with Charlie Sheen. So Charlie Sheen made a joke about O.J. Simpson and his right hand being lethal. And it was kind of like, that's weird, because we just had this guy in a subway killing the blonde girl. Kind of a parallel there. But then they're talking about JFK when they hear about it. Then Roger Stone said that Kirk had just invited him on a show to talk about JFK. And then tonight they packed the Kennedy Center with some like 85 congressmen. So the JFK connection has been built up here quite a bit. Then, of course, yeah, Janky Frames covers 33-hour manhunt for Kirk's killer. Now, there was some kind of enigmatic thing where Kirk and his wife were doing a countdown to September 16th. I don't know what that is. And then there was this book called The Long Walk. Came out, it was Stephen King from like 1979. So it's not a new book, The Long Walk. And the character is, the protagonist, they're in this game where they have to keep on walking down the road, and if they stop, they get shot. And the main character is assigned number 47. So today, you see Stephen King, who's got Trump derangement syndrome, walking down the road with a 47 on his chest, looking like a zombie, like The Walking Dead. So I'm like, dead man walking, 47. He seems to be dropping some kind of hints. Commenter says the police came. There was a police call, not sure. Well, if you could show us any videos, show us pictures or videos. Where were the police? Why was there any crime scene? Why was the crime scene taken down? There's video of the crime scene being taken down, tampered with immediately after. No, it wasn't real. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, but there's really no evidence for it. And there's every indicator here of it being staged. For example, even the laughing crisis actor I brought up. So there was one of the first witnesses, and this is how you know these things are, fake, is they bring out these witnesses who have a script, obviously. So there was this girl who's laughing about watching Charlie getting shot in the chest and bleeding out. He wasn't shot in the chest. But yeah, explain the lack of EMTs, explain the lack of police. Why weren't there any ambulances there for 3,000 people? Those are just a few of the questions that have been raised. Here's a couple of other things. Now, a lot of what we encountered is what I would call truther bait, false leads for conspiracy theorists, which is a routine thing you see with these events, which is a form of damage control, because the skeptics, those who don't believe it, they take the bait, and then their credibility is instantly undermined. It's meant to be demoralizing. It's meant to be discrediting, but it's also an indication of they've got something to hide if they're engaging in active damage control measures. Netanyahu and Trump both tweeted that they were praying for Kirk at exactly 2:02. Lots of really strange anomalies. But let's go ahead and go on with I want to read your comments, and then we'll go on from there. So we're talking about the connection between it and the Tempest. Again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. We're objectively analyzing what is presented. And if you have evidence that it's real, we would appreciate it. But you'd have to deal with the burden of proof that we've shoved back into your court, which means you have to explain away the anomalies that we're pointing out. Like, how is it, I'm not psychic, but how is it that I was able to say that if it's fake, there's going to be relevant concurrent programming and entertainment? And the #1 show in Japan, Turkey, Taiwan, and top 10 in Australia, Canada, the Disney Hulu, The Tempest, how is it that the day that came out, Charlie Kirk gets shot, and the scene is a perfect mirror? If you haven't seen my video, I recommend checking it out. Go to infiniteplane.live and look at that video, Metascript Decode, Charlie Kirk and the Tempest, and you can explain to us the coincidence of the movie perfectly lining up with what happened in real life, even the follow-up theme of the widow taking over. Like, I would not be able to predict these things if these were organic and not part of an ongoing staged theatrical production taking place in the context of the theater of Psywar. SOG says, I have no idea. It doesn't disappoint me. I hope it wasn't real. But what about the people that saw the staged assassination, all actors? Okay, you ever been to a wrestling match or a magic show? These are events designed to fool the people there. Optical illusions. Illusion is the key word here. You don't have to be in on it to be fooled. And most of the people who aren't part of it are just going to run. What are they really seeing? The squib technology is very well refined. Someone had posted a John Cusack movie, The Grifter, and in that one he's got this gash from glass, and they show what looks to be a realistic gushing wound. I mean, the special effects are not new for that specific type of injury. But my presupposition here is that if there are any indicators of a hoax, you have to assume nothing and treat it as fake until proven real. And that's how you should treat media anyway. You're not a conspiracy theorist just because you don't believe the mainstream, but they want you to be labeled that way. But their job is to prove it. And the video of the shooting itself is not enough evidence that it actually happened, especially when you look at the surrounding circumstances. So let me go through your comments. That was the main thing I want to get through tonight. Etheric Bliss 23 says, on the same day, it's becoming parallel quite literally. Yeah, the occurrence of entertainment events paralleling what's happening on the world stage, as we describe it here, is not new. Again, George Floyd and Charlie Kirk both have a birthday 33 days after 9/11, which is 10/14. The Valkyrie said, what is truth or bait in your opinion? My answer, intentionally planted false leads in order to co-opt conspiracy theories about the matter and maintain the integrity of the psychological operation. The planted clues allow the mainstream to discredit the alternative when they debunk these. And the problem also is that the truth or bait clues assume the thing happened. So right now, there's a lot of people saying it looks like this is a professional operation done by Mossad. And their evidence is the people around Charlie acting fishy when it happens. Hand signs, people holding up things that look like guns, concealed covert guns. So there's like multiple shooters. So these various rabbit trails all assume Charlie died. That's their starting point. And so these are rabbit trails for the alternative media who don't believe the official story. And they're all running with it. Every woke right person is saying Israel did it. Most conspiracy theorists are thinking the same way. I Am Thal said, the connection between Shakespeare's The Tempest and Huxley's Brave New World is that the title of Huxley's novel is a quote from The Tempest. Oh, Brave New World. Yeah, exactly. Bob Dylan, he pointed out here, released an album on September the 10th called The Tempest. This is in 2012. Might be significant. Again, The Tempest, Storm, very interesting when you look at how the storm has been a huge part of the right-wing metascript from storming the Capitol, January 6th. The storm is coming, the whole Q thing. SOG says, I'm somewhat of a conspiracy theorist. I'll watch the video, but the bullet, how do they stage that? Have you ever seen a movie? I mean, as a rule, anything they can fake in the movies, they can fake in real life. I would look up Stan Winston, special effects. Look up squibs, SQIB, squibs. Squibs are how they fake it. So a squib is a pressurized, basically a blood packet that squirts out a tube and it's remotely detonated. That's how it's done. It's actually very simple. So there's no mystery here as to how something like this could be faked in front of a live audience. And you'll see how quickly they pulled him off the stage and ran him out to the truck. What's up, Deprogrammed Truther? Appreciate the support there on Ko-Fi and all those who pre-ordered the book. So if you haven't read it, it's the handbook for the recently deprogrammed. Just click a link. Amazon's getting it out to people already. Faster than I'm getting it out, but I'm getting a box of 30 some copies. Okay, more comments. Anime Gematria said, someone commented that Charlie Kirk always wore black shirts during the college campus debates, and this was the first time he ever wore a white shirt to one of these events. White shirt with the word freedom on it. My third eye says Kirk means neck or throat in Czech. In Dutch, it means church. Chalk Body Outline says Tempest means violent, windy storm. Yeah, the storm thing is a strong connection. I Am Thal said, whoever did the audio engineering screwed up the sound of what it would be like for a bullet shot from that far away. Even if we're hearing mono source, the early reflections of the sound of the shot are very, very short and happen quickly. They used the wrong sounding sample of the gunshot. I could have had one of my students create a more natural gunshot decay than the dope they hired for $3 an hour did. IPS. Yeah, that's great points. Great points there. I think that they manufacture an illusion for the people there, and then it's reinforced with the emotional appeals. It's reinforced by all the influencers. Monolithium 33 says, I'll have to look at the Tempest for sure. Pretty amazing coincidence once again. Also, the new Disney Plus's Alien Earth, which focused on transhumanism and transferring consciousness from the wrong body into the right body. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. I had to purchase a membership for Disney Plus. So not only does the Tempest have this Charlie Kirk-esque leader of a new Republican group getting shot right in the exact same spot in the neck, released on the exact same day, and this is a trending #1 highly rated movie around the world right now. So not only do you have that eerie coincidence, as the media would call it, but the entire story is about the widow taking over. And the central focus after Charlie Kirk's death has been his widow. And even now, the Washington Times points out she's picking up where he left off. Ryler05 says, Miles Mathis's paper came out. He claims they want a civil war, possibly to construct the Christian Reich. Yeah, definitely a civil war situation. As I've been talking about since 2020, Turning Point USA seems to be platforming the revolution described in Turner Diaries. And the turning point in the book Turner Diaries, which inspired Timothy McVeigh, the turning point was when they launched an airstrike, crash a plane to the Pentagon, and then begin the revolution, the white nationalist revolution, where it's just a race war. So it's not a coincidence that the day after Charlie Kirk is taken out, all the influencers call it a turning point, and then White Lives Matter makes an appearance. And it wasn't impressive or big, but you can see the movement now around Charlie Kirk is starting to swell. Flat Bob says, oh yeah, his wife was on a TV show. She has an IMDb. She was in a show. It wasn't Big Brother, but it was similar. So she's a reality TV show person. And when you look at these psyop actors, you may as well think of them as doing reality television. They're simulating events, which become part of our collective accepted version of history. These are manufactured historic events that steer the dominant narrative and give total creative control to the worldview shapers at the top of the pyramid. So Flat Bob goes on to say, if he was shot with the 3006, his head wouldn't be attached to his body. People don't understand what that type of round does to a body. Also, there's no delay time between when he gets hit and when you hear the shot. It's all instantaneous. If he was shot from 150 yards, there'd be about a half-second delay, but there isn't. So physical impossibilities, as well as the Metascript pre-programming, and all the 33s psyop all around. Yeah, exactly. Now, Alex Jones, truth or bait, he's running with all these examples of books on Amazon about the event that came out the next day, but were published on the 9th, the day before it happened. So all these people, Kevin Zorbo, Alex Jones, all the right-wing people are running with this. They're baffled by the book thing, and I keep having to explain it to them because I just published a book on Kindle and I just experienced this. When you publish a book, you have the release date. However, if the book was published before, even a few months ago or a few years ago, you could choose that date as the publishing date. So you can, in bad faith, lie and claim the book was published earlier. So then you create the impression that the book already existed. Now, as far as the writing itself, in every one of these, they're full of M dashes. I mean, it's all AI slop. Lean Dion says, America is an Erica Kirk Church, Handmaid Tale vibes. Fascinating. And Erica spelled with a K. I see a lot of the lefty saying you can't spell Erica Kirk without KKK. All right, let's continue. Going through your comments. Eddie9254 says, I thought the black dot on his shirt was a CGI bullet hole. Yeah, at first we thought so, but it was in fact a lapel mic. We saw that later. So when we assess these things, we're examining every possible anomaly, not getting attached to it with high certainty, but it's the best that we can possibly ascertain. But we're looking for more information. We're testing our own theories and debunking things that are possibly not real evidences of hoaxery. So there was no gurney. That was a metal table that they passed. The dot on his chest has an explanation, but the indicator of it being a squib is the way his shirt puffs up, which is very dramatic. It puffs up in a way highly consistent with the squib. And as far as the blood jutting out of the neck, there's a tube the blood comes out of that's concealed beneath a patch of prosthetic skin, a skin patch. I've been looking at these special effects and they're foolproof. Okay, next, Jessica Roberts 8090 said, this is related to the 9/11 ritual, the Freedom Tower and Rome. I'm detaching from it because it feels like I'm participating in the astrotheology of the death cult. My intuition tells me there's some kind of correlation between the words recited by the children in the classroom on 9/11 and the writing on the bullets. When I'm not looking directly at the subject, I get data in the peripheral. Sometimes it's spot on. Don't take these clowns too seriously. And to her point, there are astrological alignments. The metascript is aligned in these ways. The 33 days after 9/11, Charlie Kirk and George Floyd have a birthday. And the significance of the George Floyd narrative is that it was brought up immediately before this by Kirk. And clearly, they're trying to position themselves as a White Lives Matter, a pushback, a turning point. Okay, Infinite Muse said, Charlie seemed to signal at the same time as the other two signal guys. He leans forward, back in his chair, rubbed the right side of his nose, like signaling I'm ready to go or whatever. I watched the video several times. Yeah, that was something too. So I think what they're doing again is they're sabotaging truthers with bad intel, with truther bait. And then they're providing all kinds of false leads that all presume he really died. So now instead of a what is it? Is it a real event or is it a hoax? Now they shift it to who done it. Now instead of debating whether it's real or fake, you're trying to figure out, was it that guy? Was it that guy? Was it Mossad? Was it CIA? Was it Nick Fuentes? Was it Groiper? They have all these different scapegoats. So they turn it into a scapegoat story. And it's a sales trick. You know, if you get the customer talking about what color of car they're going to get or what kind of interior, you've already pre-sold them on the car. And they sell you the story and they get you to debate over the details, what I call the fake. Like if they can get you debating as to, you know, whether or not it was the CIA or Mossad, then you're both kind of presuming it was real, which is the wrong starting point. It's a world stage, what I'd call MSM plus perspective. It's the alternative perspective, which doesn't take away from the premise established by the mainstream. Someone on X saying that there are reports that, this is Infinite Muse, that CK's team had security cameras on stage they immediately took down and won't release footage of. This news story might be because some people were calling them out for taking this crime scene down right away. Yeah, we saw that. They are removing cameras. So there's cameras behind Charlie Kirk, and there's a whole little stage area that they just immediately took it down afterward, like show's over. It's like, what about crime scene tape? What about interviewing witnesses? And you did see one witness being interviewed, and they rushed in and shut him up. Andy says if he was shot by a 30-06, his neck would have exploded. A number of people have said that. Mike Smith said, why is the crime scene not held? Why are people removing items from the crime scene? And where did the guy go with the cameras they took off the rear of the tent? And then he mentions he was on South Park. So here's something that's kind of interesting is that there were people who said to me, I don't know who this guy is. Charlie Kirk, nobody knows who he is. I'm like, no, actually, he's very popular among the demographic, that the youth demographic, youth Republicans. And he's going to colleges on these tours. Turning Point USA is the biggest conservative political action committee. So no, he is a very well-known person if you're a Politico. But to mainstream him in preparation for this event, they put him on South Park as Cartman, who's always associated with Hitler and the Klan and being a racist bigot and all this stuff. So they painted a target on his back. So now you have all these leftists jumping out, thousands of them, celebrating his death. And they probably didn't know who he was. SOG Isaac says, why would they fake it? Curious, just asking. Okay, well, the reason why they do psychological operations, influence operations, is because they are steering our collective perception, our collective worldview. It's not just left or right. Why do you think they faked the death of George Floyd? Because that gave the left vindication. It basically told them, yes, we're being oppressed by systemic racism. We need to rise up. Our woke leftist values are valid, and this is our struggle. So they have to do these psyops to reinforce people's belief systems. And in this case, they're definitely doing a right-wing kind of, I'm not going to say revolution, but they're doing a right-wing movement right now that is analogous to BLM. They needed a martyr to set this off, and they got their martyr. Conscious Reality says, Tim, do you think the LDS church is involved with this? Utah being dominated by the church. Also, side note, there's a smart city being built right now in Draper, Utah, at the former state prison. Yeah, absolutely. I know the shooter, Mormon, the governor of Utah was the one who said he prayed for 33 hours that the shooter wasn't one of theirs. So I guess he was praying to the Mormon God that the shooter was a Muslim. That's what we're supposed to take out of this. But regardless, he was praying for 33 hours. Give me a break. He had the beehive behind him. But yeah, I don't think you can separate these things. And I'm not saying it's because they're Mormons, but there's a interlocking networks of media, government, law enforcement that necessarily have to work together for these things to happen. And religion is a part of it. I consider religion to be a branch of media. I consider the mainstream media to, in fact, be the de facto state church for the world. It does put us in a collective worldview that we all share, quote, globally. Lean Dion says, I think them shutting up that guy was to further the idea of multiple shooters because he was giving a different account. Yeah, he was wearing a 47 hat and a red shirt, so he could have been a plant, because they want to plant the narrative of multiple shooters and the guy's a patsy. And supposedly he's not confessing. He's actually not complying. And a lot of people are comparing him to Oswald. And this is a template, because back in the 60s, they're like, after the JFK thing, they're like, Oswald was a patsy. It was the CIA or it was Israel. They have all these different scapegoats. This is no different. When Trump was shot at, there were multiple takes on it, like, oh, there's a second shooter, or it was an inside job. But this is the thing. They have been using conspiracy theories in order to co-opt anyone not buying the mainstream. So one of the points I made in this book, Handbook for the Recently Deprogrammed, is that none of the popular conspiracy theories are actually true. I mean, maybe Bigfoot, but literally none of them are true. There's a meta conspiracy to use conspiracy theories to keep people in the mainstream box. Because the alternative, the conspiracy theories, what I call Trutherville, is a subset of the mainstream. There is not one premise they begin with that doesn't originate with the mainstream version, because they're the anti. They're the controlled opposition. The only non-controlled opposition perspective out there is the perspective that rejects the conspiracy universe of ideas. You reject the Alex Jonestown Kool-Aid. You're like, I'm not taking the Q-pipe, none of this Kool-Aid, no red pills. So the people who recognize the fakery, in fact, I saw this really good quote by Days of Noah. Let me see if I marked it. So Days of Noah said, here you can tell how big accounts mislead the masses, calling a deathless media hoax a, quote, ritual sacrifice. This is key misleading disinfo that many believe in. I've looked at countless sacrifices, and all I ever saw was fakery, fake blood, crisis actors. It's not the truth. See, that's an off-world stage perspective. It's not a truther perspective. It's not the second shooter perspective, Israel did it perspective. No, it's the whole thing was fake. Charlie Kirk was fake. Charlie Kirk is a fake Christian conservative Pied Piper whose character was going to die as a martyr from the very inception of Turning Point USA. Jamarin May says, an evening with the Infinite Plane Society, an intimate affair. Yeah, I figured we have a little bit of time tonight, maybe 10 more minutes, but I wanted to kind of catch up on recent points. So what we're doing here in Days of Noah, I'd consider to be a part of this, is we're trying to aggregate those who have the off-world stage perspective and become a self-aware demographic that knows it's not part of the alternative to the mainstream. We're not just anti the pro, whatever they're pro offering, but we're also anti. You have to be both, anti-pro, anti. If you take the reflexive opposite perspective, you're going to be lined up behind operatives with an agenda. SOG says, what's that video to watch what you're saying? Yeah, go to infiniteplane.live. Just go to my channel and look at the video that says Charlie Kirk and the Tempest. And this is just one example. It's formulaic. It's systemic. We see this with every single psyop. And what it gives away is staged events have parallel occurrences real time in the entertainment. It's all part of a singular echo chamber. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. We can predict it. And again, we're not psychic. So how were we able to predict that there would be something in some popular show that was immediately reflecting this, and then we instantly find something? And this isn't cherry picking, because the timing of it is perfect. The placement of the wound is perfect. And the story goes beyond the guy getting shot in a church, being a comparable character, leader of a new Republican group, but his widow taking over. And this is just as the Washington Times reports that his widow is taking over. I mean, it's perfect. It's predictable. And then we find that George Floyd and Charlie Kirk both have an October 14th birthday, which is, again, very consistent pattern here. And all we're doing is we're recognizing patterns. The birth dates and death dates play a significant role in all of these events. It's another hoax indicator. Okay, Matthew 307 said, bro, the guy got shot. I hunt, and I've seen what it looks like when a bullet hits a body, and Charlie got shot. It wasn't a blood packet. He really got shot. And I've been emphasizing that looking real isn't evidence that it is real. Looking real is not sufficient evidence to say it is definitely real, because every magic show you go to looks real. You know, we are foolable, dupable. You have to keep in mind that you can be tricked. So we're looking at these things as not just a captive audience watching a magic show with everybody else, but we get out of our seats. We go backstage. We get more information. So Pineapple Power Suit responded to Matthew with, I hate to break it to you, but I worked in film for many years, and I saw the same exact fake shot, the blood produced by the special effects department, with no trouble in camera, which uses film and is much more brightly lit, and film is more sensitive than the video shot on a phone. And it looked completely perfect and real. Yes, this could easily have been produced by a crew of special effects professionals. I've seen it done. Another thing that we do here is we analyze an event for fakeability. Like, is this even fakeable? Well, what is our basis for knowing if something's fakeable or not? Well, as a rule, it's pretty much axiomatic to say, if they can fake it in the movies, they can fake it in the news, with a rare exception. But I mean, I really like what Days of Noah said about how the big accounts call these things ritual sacrifices because they believe people are dying. That's their starting point. And that's where we reject that starting point. And there's quite a lot more. I'm going to do a full-on documentary about this, because a deep dive. So Charlie Kirk had a partner, a pastor named Frank Turek. So if you look into this pastor, several of his books have covers that foreshadow what just happened. For example, one of his books is Stolen from God, and it has like a bullet hole. This other one about politically incorrect, and it has a globe with a trans flag and a bullet hole. So there's tons of this type of predictive programming, foreshadowing. Synchromorpheus found that they're performing an adaptation of the Tempest in Utah Valley University next month. Probably not insignificant. But let me go through what I earmarked on my tweets. If you want to follow me there, it's IPS Think Tank. Workers at UVU rip up the grass where Charlie Kirk was shot to make it beautiful again. Kind of like how they bulldozed that elementary school. You know, they just ripped up the grass. What about the crime scene tape? Ann Vandersteel says, warning, you're living through a psychological operation. Nothing is as it seems. And that's always true. It's not just true because of Charlie Kirk. You've been living through a psychological operation your entire life. You're in the theater of psy-war. They use psychological warfare to insert their fake historic events into our collective timeline. Now, it's been pointed out that Erica was posting on her social media that there's a countdown to September 16th. Don't know what that means, but Tuesday. J.D. Vance will host the Charlie Kirk Show tomorrow. Now, John Cullen said, Kirk was shot at 12:09 p.m., September the 10th. He was pronounced dead 90 minutes later. When was he transferred to a mortuary for embalming? J.D. Vance arrived in Salt Lake City, Utah on Air Force at 2:30 Mountain Time the next day. Vance departed Salt Lake, escorting Kirk's casket to Phoenix, Arizona. Based on the available reports, the autopsy likely started on September 10th or 11th in Taylorsville, Utah. According to Grok, it was transferred to a mortuary in Salt Lake City. Anyway, he's going on here trying to find out if this timeline makes sense. But I don't know. People are digging. We're going to keep looking down that particular avenue. And Trump and others are making quite a lot about the leftists and their rhetoric online. I see a lot of like almost bipartisan support for censorship arriving out of this whole thing. Teachers, pilots, professors, all kinds of people, nurses are being fired from their jobs for laughing at the death. TMZ and their entire newsroom cheered when Charlie died. And Harvey came out. TMZ's, I guess, what's his last name? Is it Harvey something? He came out to say that they were cheering at a car chase, but that was actually debunked. Harvey Levin. So Harvey Levin tried to cover up for his entire newsroom cheering at Charlie Kirk's death, and that fell apart. So there's a lot of this kind of psychotic rhetoric from the left. It's getting a lot of pushback on the right. It's almost creating this It's like a civil war in words at the moment, but it's ramping up. Health Ranger has asked, why did they dismantle the crime scene so quickly and effectively and tamper with the evidence all within 5 minutes? Matt Wallace has the original video. And you can see here, so somebody gets assassinated. Do you think this is something they'd want to investigate? Within 5 minutes, they've torn down the scene. No police, no crime scene tape. That's a huge red flag. 91 Okie says, I thought Ben Shapiro was going to own Turning Point. He said he was going to pick up the bloody mic. I mean, Charlie Kirk is more Ben Shapiro than Nick Fuentes. And the shooter was clearly a Antifa by the stuff he put on his bullets. And there was something else, too, that someone pointed out. So the shooter had a shirt with an American flag and an eagle on it. Now, today, some lefty destroyed a Charlie Kirk, at the Charlie Kirk headquarters, he destroyed their memorial, and he was wearing one of those shirts. And then Secret Morpheus pointed out that that same shirt was worn back in March by one of these protesters that was setting Tesla cars on fire. Laura Loomer says, I'm not a religious person, but I saw this on X and it caught my eye. So Charlie Kirk was trending with Jesus with 3.3 million posts. We also mentioned the throat, the symbolism, the censorship, George Floyd and Charlie Kirk, both neck injury. And then you have the blade throat variant of COVID floating around. But yeah, you got to look at The Tempest, season 1, episode 1, aired 9/10. It is unbelievable. Well, no, it's actually totally believable and predictable. I shouldn't say it's unbelievable, because for decades, truthers would see these coincidences and say, it's because we live in a simulation. We're video game characters. It's like, no. The mind war operatives want you to run to that conclusion that nothing is real, because you can't reconcile the cognitive dissonance. Like, how is it so consistently predictable that real life is following Netflix or Hulu, often real-time parallel? How is that even happening? And until you can understand or recognize that there's a monolithic control over all media, news, propaganda, and entertainment propaganda, until you recognize as a singular source, none of this is going to make sense to you. That's the big paradigm shift. When you recognize the monolithic nature of it and how it all feeds into a uniform, singular worldview. That worldview is what I call our religion, basically. Lean Dion says the dignified transfer of the body. Yeah, so when they transfer the body, they call it a dignified transfer. The military taking on Air Force Two is unprecedented, only reserved for military, government, etc. Also seems like an airtight way to keep control over transporting an asset. Yes. Yeah, and to me, I just find it fishy because the lack of investigation on the crime scene. And, I know you can rush an autopsy and embalming. It's not out of the question, but they pushed it all so fast to make 9/11, to turn 9/11 into a Charlie Kirk holiday. Jamarian May says Hulu also has a show called Paradise about an elite building secret underground facilities. Well, everything that is popularized is going to have some propaganda component that you have to look at. And in this case, The Tempest, I was just looking off of the immediate visuals of the guy getting shot in the church. So I sat down to watch episode 2 today, and it's all about the widow taking over. And then I see the same thing happening with Erica Kirk. So there's a continuing, ongoing parallel here that I'll be following up on as I continue to watch this particular show. I have to watch a lot of TV as homework, basically. They also claimed that there were explosive devices beneath news vehicles that didn't go off. Not sure, we'll wait on that. Eric Trump has said, this could be the greatest mistake these people have ever made. It's a hit on our country. It's a hit on our movement. It's a hit on Christianity and religion. This is a big top-down psyop. Christy Nome, who talks about killing the dog named Cricket, said, the last thing Charlie texted me about a day or two before he passed was about the mayors and governors. He wants them held accountable for how dangerous they made the situations for the people who live in those cities. Holding mayors and governors accountable. So, turning point in Turner Diaries is when the revolution happens. And this is when they overthrow the system. The organization, which is the white nationalist uprising, take out the system, which is the American government. And remember, this book, Turner Diaries, one, written by a guy born 9/11, 1933, it inspired McVeigh to retaliate for Waco, Texas. Again, Waco, Texas, 33-year-old Dave Koresh incinerated, Branch Davidians. That event radicalized Alex Jones. That event radicalized McVeigh. McVeigh retaliates on the anniversary date, gets executed 90 days before 9/11, at the age of 33, by the way, on 6/11, which I've often talked about the significance of 6/11 in the far right. It's kind of a code. And it infers like this inverted 9/11. So instead of an external terrorist, it's the domestic violent extremists on the inside. But McVeigh, again, inspired by the book, launches this attack. And the book contains an attack on the Pentagon. Very 9/11-y stuff. Sunshine Diamond Eye says, I've seen more demonic behavior in the last 48 hours than I've seen in my entire life. I think what scares me the most is the amount of demon-possessed souls that have lost their humanity. Unmeasurable hatred flows through their veins. This is a battle between good and evil. I see a lot of this talk as well, suggesting that this event has catalyzed a separation between good and evil. And it's hard to deny that, because fake or real, the people who consume the news passively, mainstream and alternative, think it was real. And so their reactions should be gauged accordingly. And it holds up a mirror to people. And yeah, a lot of people do, in fact, support political murder, political assassinations. A Canadian teacher suspended after forcing a class full of 10-year-olds to watch the video of Charlie Kirk's assassination over and over again while ranting about fascism. I mean, think about the children who grew up watching the Challenger explosion in class. They're all traumatized, so they feel like these martyrs died for them. The teacher died. They all cry. Ronald Reagan comes out and he says, maybe it's because we weren't paying attention to space anymore. We needed this to happen. Well, now you have another example of the youth being systematically traumatized by a psyop. A searchable database will soon be released exposing over 50,000 people who celebrated Charlie Kirk's death, listing their names and employers. This is an increase from 30,000 just a couple days ago. So they're releasing a list. They're snitching on anybody who basically used their free speech to grave dance. But it's a searchable list with their employers. And a lot of people are getting fired and they're reacting online. It's a mess. Patriotic Blonde says there was an active crime scene. Why would they take it down? Why weren't they arrested for tampering with evidence? Exactly. Lots of people asking for the autopsy report. Multiple photos show he was not wearing a bulletproof vest. There were some people who were saying he was wearing a bulletproof vest. I think there might be indicators of some kind of a hose. Not sure how well they hit it. There are some parts where it looks like you can see it, but it was not a bulletproof vest. FEMA section chief, Charlie Kirk deserved it. Then you have these, I mean, Charles Manson had fans. I think Ted Bundy had fans. You have TikTokers offering to basically be fans for the person who Luigi's President Trump. I mean, so many people are going online and just making these bold statements without any concept of the consequences, and they don't seem like actors. What's interesting about this one is it's involving a lot of people who aren't obviously on the psyop entertainment complex's payroll. American Airlines grounding and removing from service pilots who celebrated the assassination of Kirk. Anyway, it's getting quite ugly out there. I don't have much more time, but I just wanted to update you on the Tempest, on concurrent programming, and on where this is going. 91 Oki says, what if we just ignored the news for a month? Well, I think once you've come to understand what the news is, you don't need to be immersed in it. You know, you can pretty much relax and enjoy your life. There's no point to being emotionally entangled with every headline as they're churned out, as most people are. Unplug. I don't lose any sleep over any of this stuff. Conscious Reality says, this reminds me of the Nipsey Hussle death. Yeah, what's interesting about this one, again, I think, is that this is a manufactured martyr. There's a lot of Kennedy stuff attached to it, MLK stuff attached to it. It's 100% manufactured from the top down. And you can tell by the fact that they put it on South Park that they wanted this person to be ubiquitous. Everyone knows who he is now. And there's some big event planned on the 22nd, some stadium event. There's, again, this Charlie Kirk thing is just getting started. I think they have their reciprocal George Floyd situation. Anyway, thank you for the comments. Keep commenting. I will be responding to them in my next video. Go to infiniteplane.live and look at the 2 Metascript breakdowns of the Tempest. Violent Pengon has a few comments here. This is good. People online. Okay, this is regarding the Tempest connection. Are seeing it. They think it's a coincidence. Trump said this is a virtual manhunt. They keep talking about video games. He left notes and a code for dropping a bomb. Yes, that's right. He used a video game code on one of his bullets. It was directional inputs. I think it was up, down, right, right, right. And it brings in a 500 kilogram bomb called the Eagle. Could connect to the Turner Diaries for a right-wing retaliation. Turner Diaries story takes place starting on 9/16. I didn't know that. I'm listening to the audiobook right now. It's boring. Ends on 11/9. Kirk's funeral's 9/22. Also connects to the Iran war. They had a terror attack watch until 9/22. There were twin pillars at his vigil. There's quite a lot here. This is a great post. I'm gonna have to go through that with the fine-tooth comb here when I have time. He also remarked, okay, here's another comment from Violet Pengun. Sorry, you know what? Chrome is ridiculous. Sometimes it puts up these little flat blocks in it. I can't see what I'm trying to read here. Okay, here we go. I'm trying to read some comments, but unfortunately, I got some ridiculous search box that popped up. Riley 05, George Floyd and Charlie Kirk died by neck injury. Yeah, I think ultimately the neck injury thing is some kind of censorship reference. Okay, here we go. IPS predicted a rise in domestic terror that connects directly to it. The news is crying about Discord and online. OMG, I need to wash my hands to get shot after being here and seeing this. Yeah, this is true. Discord has been brought up here. So now it's kind of like after 9/11, it was all about the radicalizing mosques and the radical verses and the clerics that were creating terrorists. Well, that's been replaced by these, like, instead of like terror cells, now it's like Discord servers. They've built up this pattern for quite some time. Conscious Reality says, what's the deal about the eagles? Yeah, the eagles on the shirts of the terrorists and the Tesla car burners, the eagle bomb reference, and then Erica holding the golden eagle over the casket. So that's a repeated theme that I've noted. I'm not sure what it means yet, but there's something with the eagle. Turner Diaries 916 comports with the countdown that the Kirks were engaged in, counting down to 916. And again, Turning Point USA, and I think Synchromorpheus found this. They have this logo that's like an arrow that turns, that's, you know, doing a 180. And there's this part where Charlie Kirk is talking to a guy wearing a shirt that says sniper. And the Turning Point logo is right where his neck is. It's just perfect. But Turning Point, again, it's always been platforming. I mean, I wouldn't say it's platforming the far extreme, but it's always been platforming, I think, or laying the groundwork for this Christian nationalist resurgence, this turning point being like make America great again. The idea is great again, turning things back. And what were they against? Well, they were against, as far as the right, turning back. MAGA represents reversing the changes wrought by progressivism. So it's like let's go back on feminism, civil rights, etc. Conscious Reality says Utah State bird is an eagle. Didn't know that. Good find. And the beehive thing has all kinds of connotations. Illuminati, Masonic. They even talk about it in the Third Degree, which is highly symbolic because that's when the candidate dies. They talk about, let's see if I can find the verse. Well, we'll have to get back to this. They talk about the beehive as a symbol of industry in that particular rite. Lots of 33s, 33 hours. So they found the guy. Charlie Kirk is shot in front of 3 hats with 47, 47, 47, which gives you 33. Like, if you look at it closer, it all fits an established template. Real events do not follow established templates. Real events do not have perfect mirrors happening in the most popular streaming show of the day. Life does not follow Netflix. Psyops follow Netflix, and psyops are not real life. All right, thanks for your comments. We will be back tomorrow, and there's quite a lot to look forward to. Very interesting times. Thanks for all your input. You know, this think tank had taken what looked to be a real event, very shocking, and in a matter of hours, we began to churn through what was available. We didn't lose ourselves in the propaganda narratives, and we arrived several days later at a pretty solid stance here that, yeah, we're obviously looking at a staged event. Charlie Kirk is not dead. What does that say about his Christianity? I see these pictures of him hugging Jesus in heaven, like AI rendered, where Jesus is taller than him, which would make Jesus like 7 feet tall. But like, clearly, he's an actor. So everybody who follows him is getting played. And so you're looking at all of these people in these big events, they're really legitimately crying for him. And one of the things that I've described psyops as are contemporary myths. They created a new crucifixion, a new Christ, a new martyr. The martyr term is very religious in and of itself. So it's an assassination. It's not a murder. He's a martyr. He's a saint. I mean, this is really culty if you think about it. All right, thanks a lot. We'll see you all tomorrow, and I'll be in Discord tonight.